Hey, I'm Mitch.
And I'm Greg, and this is Sidenote.
A podcast where every episode we tell stories about and then debate a controversial topic.
And then we research and splice in all the mind-blowing shiznit throughout so you are entertained while simultaneously learning. Today's episode is about Game of Thrones. We talk about my reactions to the brutal red wedding that everyone has talked about. If you don't know what that is, you will find out. And we talk about me being kicked out of a play for having a mental breakdown. And then we will get into the debate, as Game of Thrones is Mitch's favorite show ever, and I think it is extremely overrated and have a hard time staying awake. And off the top, spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about copious amounts of deaths that happen on this show. Hey, baby, hey, I say, the boys say. Oh my gosh, Gwen Stefani. She used to be so cool.
I couldn't have told you who sang that song.
Oh, really?
I mean, I obviously know, but yeah, I didn't know.
You like shot to attention, started to sing all the words.
I don't know. It's just like one of those times in my life, you know?
What is new with you, my boo?
What is new with me is something you introduced me to. Thankfully, I stuck it through the show Pen 15.
Oh, wow. It's incredible.
If you guys haven't heard it, it's like amazing, touching, hilarious, so poignant.
It's honestly, I haven't seen a show that's made me feel like that in a long time where I'm like, this is perfect. It's so well written, executed. It's amazing. There's 10 episodes. Yeah. It's on Hulu.
Premise is it's these two girls who have written a story about them in like grade 7, but they're actually playing themselves in grade 7, but all the other actors are kids.
Yeah, but they're adults like looking and very convincingly acting like kids. Yeah. It's incredible.
And covering like those cringy, awkward moments and hilarious like puberty moments you go through as
big
kids.
Mouth in real life, but more like poignant.
Yeah, like it's definitely equally as funny, I think, but then it gets into moments where you're actually like sad and it feels like so reminiscent of being younger.
And it's in the year 2000, so it resonated with us because we're like that exact age where we were in grade 7 year 2000, like calling into 99.
Yeah, with all the songs and
win tickets to Bewitched.
And like it's just like I don't know, it's a story about girls that I don't, and in like a sexual way, like talking about their bodies becoming sexualized.
That usually is like reserved for men.
Yeah, boys getting to talk about like jerking off is always jokes in shows, but I feel like it's cool to see like a lot of TV shows.
Well, it's interesting because today we are talking about a TV show, so that kind of brings it up. A TV show that we don't agree on.
Okay, here we go from the get-go.
Oh, what did we learn this week?
Before we get to that, let's talk about what did we learn this week. Should I go first, or do you want to go first?
Hit me.
Hit you? Oh, okay.
Hit me.
Well, I learned something very fascinating that we talk about all the time. Why time flies faster as we age.
Oh, God. We had a chapter in our book about
so
this.
A new study was published
and
research to kind of suggest something about this.
This year has gone faster than any year before in my entire life. It's horrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. Yeah, and I'm just like, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but like sometimes the only way for me to justify and feel happy about that is that like winter feels shorter. But that's like a really depressing.
Winter is coming.
Oh, here we go. So physics may actually be the answer, and it has to do with the rate of speed that information can travel on your neurons. So as you age, your neurons develop and become bigger and bigger. So there's two elements. One is that the distance and length your neurons have to travel to process information is actually longer, they think.
Wait, as you age, your neurons in theory get longer?
Yeah, so it says they attribute it to the phenomenon of physical changes in the aging human body. As tangled webs of nerves and neurons mature, they grow in size and complexity, leading to longer paths for signals to traverse.
Oh, wow.
As those paths then begin to age, they also degrade, giving more resistance to the flow of electrical signals.
Meaning what?
So ultimately, the end result is that when you're older, you can actually process fewer images in the same amount of time as you could when you're younger. So your brain's taking in less information. And as a result,
and that slows down time because as we've talked
less
before,
distinct memories.
Yeah, and novelty seeking experience, like doing something novel slows down time because your brain has to like work in different ways.
Yeah, neurons build connections.
It's why when you're walking somewhere, it often feels like it takes longer than when you walk home from that place. Because when you're walking there, your brain is hyper aware of where you are, the directions, the new smells, the new things around you. And it actually slows down your perception of time. But when you're walking home, you've seen it all before, and your brain is working less hard.
So this is kind of adding to like this isn't necessarily like the one and only thing. Obviously, perspective on time is a big one as well. Like when you're younger, 1 year of your life is like the whole life, but now 1 year of our life is just a small little smidgen.
But yeah,
I mean, it's nice and sad in some ways. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer that like we just don't like in the same amount of like in a day, a kid just experiences so much than us.
So much
more than us, literally. They
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
process more information. And that's kind of sad, but I saw some interesting discussions online of people being like, so if we were able to like slow down or stop or reverse the degradation of neurons, would that speed up and allow us to like feel like time slower?
Yeah,
And I
would
was
it?
like, well, I mean, that was just like online
Everyone's
commenters.
obsessed with that, like obsessed with how to not age. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many interesting
But
scientific.
it's like, okay, question. If you had a choice between two things,
Yeah.
not aging like your outer body and the way you
Okay.
looked, not aging your brain, which would you do?
Not aging my brain, for sure.
Okay, yeah, same.
Yeah? Okay, cool.
But like, wouldn't that also be like that's the hard part if your brain is perfectly fine and then your
I'm
body's
so scared.
shut down.
No. Well, I mean, I'm going to die eventually. But I would rather, I'm so scared of my brain like going away. I'm so scared. Oh my God, I'm so scared.
We'll get you existential crisis. What
Game of
did
Thrones.
you learn
Game of
this
Thrones.
week,
Oh yeah,
Greg?
what did I learn of this week? I just had like a full, like literal mental breakdown. I was like, what are we doing? Okay. So mine is about how it is now spring. Wow, time
Wow,
flies.
cool
Winter is
fact.
not coming. And so 10 degrees Celsius, which is about 50 Fahrenheit. Come on, America, fix your system. That's sort of like an average spring day. And people say, you know, that feels a lot warmer in the spring, whereas in the fall, 10
like
degrees can
freezing.
feel cold.
Yes.
So that is something that we assume is psychological.
Mm-hmm.
But there actually have done some recent studies that found that it actually might be physiological in that over the winter, your body actually adapts in that you shiver and you have vasoconstriction of your veins in your peripheries of your skin when you are cold. So at the beginning, when you first feel that 10 degrees Celsius in
Like
the
your
fall,
body's not
your
prepped.
is not prepped. You start to shiver and you start to really feel cold. Then over time, your body actually adapts so that in the summer, it actually feels warmer. And so one way they studied this was on
Meaning like it's not just mental.
it's not just mental.
okay.
There's actually like your body has adapted throughout the winter. And they did this on fisher people, not necessarily fishermen, fisher people who were having their hands like always being so cold by having to like go into cold water in the winter. Like it's crazy to think about being a fisher person. Oh my God.
I never, ever.
And so when they actually put like a fisher person's hand into a bowl of freezing water and a controlled normal person's hand in a bowl of water, that fisher person's hand will literally be warmer. Like their body has adapted to deal with
adjust
it.
to that.
Adjust. And so they think maybe that is what's
really
happening
cool.
to people. So it's not just psychological, although that of course plays a piece.
No, that's really fascinating. I think like you can kind of see it like if you go to a new climate, your body, even if that climate's sustained like all the time, you'll at first it'll be tough, but then you do kind of like just get used
we
to
are
it.
amazing.
Within limits, obviously, right?
Sacks of blood and water.
Storytime.
Ugh, Game of Thrones, GOT, the bane of my existence. So, oh my God, it's literally making me like convulse. If you don't know from that little interlude where we fall on this spectrum, I do not like Game of Thrones. I said it. Okay, I said it
That's
in the
not even
open. Wow, I'm tear me down, drag me to hell, or whatever. But okay, we're gonna debate this later. But let's start with our stories around it because I
I mean, everyone has a story. Okay. Heads up. Obviously, there's going to be like
spoiler alert.
major spoilers in this. Like, not for anything that's supposed to happen, going to happen, but like, actually, probably only up to the end of season 4. But it's possible that something else might slip out of our mouths.
Always wanted to say spoiler alert and like mean it. I'm usually just saying it in like a. I usually after I've said something spoilery go spoiler alert and like
I say up till
speech.
season 4 because Greg hasn't watched past that, but you
I
have
watched half of season 4.
season 4. I've watched it also. There might be other things that slip out, but that's at your own
Like
risk.
a dragon killed a prince. Cool. Okay. Anyways,
Didn't happen. Okay. So let's talk about like obviously the main story that everyone experiences who watches Game of Thrones. This is called the Red Wedding.
Okay.
One of the most. I mean,
This is what my
many
story
moments
was
leading
about.
up
Is
to the
this
Red
what-
Wedding that are their own Red Weddings, but then by the time you get to the Red Wedding, you're like, this is absolutely insane.
Okay, so I'll tell my story around the Red Wedding. Okay?
Yeah. Can I preface it?
Yes, you can preface
Like, because
it. I'm angry.
we had been watching the show together, but I remember that week I was away in Guelph with my family. And so I watched that episode on my own. And you know when you're like I hadn't really been looking on the internet, so I was not prepared to be like so ready to like sit down and watch something epic. I was just kind of like put it on. I was like, I remember having a snack and just, not that I was like on my phone or anything, but when it happened, I was so caught off guard. Like I wasn't you know when someone tells you an episode's good and you're like, okay, I'm mentally ready for like something. I just like was in absolute.
Did you watch it
shock.
live?
Not live. I had watched it like on PVR or something that like my family had.
The Red Wedding is a very famous Game of Thrones episode because it is extremely violent and everyone who you love dies, okay? And this first aired in 2013, which, wow, that just makes me feel like time truly does fly. And the accumulation of all of the mentions on social media, blogs, forums, and news sites at the time made it for HBO the most socially active episode ever. Within a week, it had 700,000 mentions. It was so messed up that if you are like Mitch, you can go on YouTube and watch fan video compilations of people reacting to the Red Wedding. And much like it did for me, the unprecedented turn of events invoked an incredibly visceral, emotional reaction. One that simply can't just be chalked up to how violent the scene is. Why were people reacting so terribly?
Oh no! Oh shit! Oh! Oh, really?
Due to generations worth of storytelling, especially when it comes to fantastical fiction, which Game of Thrones is, one could argue that we've been conditioned to expect happy endings where the good guys prevail and justice is restored. In any other story, the fact that the Starks were fighting the good fight would make them essentially invincible to a normal narrative context.
Yes! I am invincible!
That this precedent was destroyed and so abruptly and violently really drove home the show's theme that nobody is or was safe. In fact, there's a literal scientific study that I found that assesses the mortality of characters on Game of Thrones. It's like, okay, I don't know who these scientists are. I guess they don't have better things to do, or some could argue this is important.
Drag her, slay her, read her.
So the probability of a character dying within the first hour of appearing on screen is about 14%. The probability of survival within the show is worse for characters who were male, who had not switched allegiance during the show, and who are featured more prominently. So following this pattern, as we move into the last season, if there is a male on the show who seems to be loyal and not switching sides and is in a lot of an episode, you should look out. Bam, he's going to be dead. One thing I can say about Game of Thrones in doing my research is that it is fascinating. Nobody is safe, and this does go against the way we've been conditioned to hear and read stories. And in that sense, if you can handle it, Game of Thrones must be a pretty epic show. So what were your experiences with the Red Wedding? Mitch also wants me to ask, did the Purple Wedding even things out? It's like, okay, what is that?
He poisoned my son, your king.
Let us know using the hashtag Sidenote Podcast. So this is the famous scene in Game of Thrones called the Red Wedding. If you haven't heard of it,
Everyone dies.
everyone you love dies.
Like literally the whole 3 seasons
In
up
a
until
horrible
that
like
So in my mind I was like I loved it. I was mortified at first and heartbroken, but then was like I'm so excited to watch this with Greg. And so that leads into like us sitting down to watch it.
Okay, so I need to start by saying that I am sensitive. Okay, I have
you
learned.
might not be able to tell. No, Greg is very sensitive.
No, but you actually might not
way.
be able to tell.
Okay.
I like very good in my life at being like I can deal with a lot of pain and I can like make sure everyone around me feels really comfortable, and I'm good at like, you know, I have like resilience within me. But if something makes me sad, I will lose control.
Really impacts
I like,
you,
and
yeah.
I'm really, really sensitive when it comes to like movies and plays and so okay, I have a specific story about an example of how sensitive I am. So I once went to a 12 and up production of Oliver Twist. I was 11.
Okay.
Yes. What?
I feel like the 12 and up part, that age gets higher and higher every time to like make it sound like it's more extreme. I feel like it was 11 and up last time I heard it, but now you're like, I was even younger.
No, it was a 12 plus production of Oliver Twist at Young People's Theatre in Toronto, and I was taken to it at the ripe age of 11 under the assumption that I could handle what I was about to see. So I don't remember much, but I do remember falling in love with the character of Nancy, right?
Yeah, and she's like one of the main female protagonists who like takes care of Oliver and really brings him in as like a motherly figure.
And it's so amazing. So right before we're leading up to intermission, in this story and in this play, they take the Nancy character and they throw her.
It's not before intermission. It's near the end of the show.
No, you haven't. This is a play. This isn't a musical.
I mean, okay, but like. Okay, maybe it's drastically different than the musical. I'm just saying
fine.
I'm just saying I was in
Oliver. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, I guess it makes sense. It's near the end. It doesn't really matter when it took place. But they throw this Nancy character behind a wall and they beat her to death.
To death, yeah.
And so there's an actor putting his hand up, putting his hand down to make it look like he's beating her. You don't see it, and I'm pretty sure the actress was just slamming her hand onto the ground to make this audible noise of beating. But I got so upset. I stood up, and I was like, Nancy! No! I was screaming, crying. My dad was like pulling me down. These ushers came running down the aisle, completely disrupted the whole play. They pulled me out.
Oh my God.
And they dragged. I just like remember just being like, Nancy, no! No! And they're pulling me out. And I just remember that stark. It was a matinee performance at like 2:00 on a Sunday.
Oh my God.
They pulled me into the like lobby, and I just remember that stark contrast of like the light hitting me, and all of a sudden I'm like standing near like a concession stand, and
realizing
I'm like, oh,
it's a play.
Like it's a play. And then the usher was like, okay, it's an actress, we can go meet her backstage, she's still alive, like trying to like talk me through it. And I was
your
like,
parents with you?
So my mom was sitting in another part. My mom was just sitting there. I did not know who that kid is. Yeah, my dad was. I just remember my dad being like, "What is wrong with you?" But I remember they were like, "I guess it was 12 plus. Like you were 11 and you couldn't handle it." And it was just like, that is an example of the sensitivity that I have towards storytelling and plays, and
like really falling for characters and feeling them.
And so when I watched,
I just want to. I have to, before you like the Game of Thrones, comment on the fact that like when I was in Oliver, I was also 11.
And you had to like...
And in the musical, they actually do the same thing. They put her behind a thing and they bludgeon her to death, and he screams. And then later he's like, "Your eyes! Stop looking at me with your eyes!" As he's like killing her, and then he like gets killed later that way because he's
in the musical for kids.
Yes, I'm sure there is an age thing on the musical as well. But it just makes me laugh because in one sense I'm like, yeah, 11's young. In another I'm like, 11 is old, Greg, to like not realize that like Nancy's like an actress.
And I remember even like maybe it was
it's one thing to feel it, but it's so cute and hilarious that you jumped up and screamed. Like that's so you in a nutshell.
I do feel like I do remember being like to my parents, maybe it was after intermission, being like, I freaking love Nancy, like all this stuff, and they're probably like, oh good Lord. I also my mom almost kicked me out of Ever After because I was crying so profusely from the get-go when her dad dies. And at one point when she punches the sister, it's based on Cinderella, over the bed, I stood up and clapped, and my mom was like, get a grip.
Oh my God.
There was snot all over my shirt.
Like I haven't cried in a movie in so long because being with you makes me laugh. So like because like if I'm emotional during a movie, I often look beside, and then you're like and then it's just so funny to me that I can't, like, it pulls me out, and I'm just,
I know, you always make me feel so bad. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do, like, not cry to like let you cry?
I'm not asking you to do that. I can only cry if I'm alone, because otherwise I'm commenting on you or watching you.
Yeah,
anyway.
I am very resilient, and then I literally break down. So the red wedding to me was offensive. It was disgusting. I know that Mitch was excited to have me watch this scene, and it just, from that point forward,
I didn't think you would react that way. Yeah.
I was so mad, and I was like, this is...
You weren't also, like, you were mad, but you were also absolutely horrified. Like, I've never, like, the blood left your face. and you were so disturbed. Like I turned into pure anger after. You were just like, I hate this. But in the moment, I was like, it looked like you were actually watching like people die.
I honestly, I was watching any person I cared about die. I absolutely hated it, and I think it was I think we fought after because I think you were really excited.
Yeah, it was like it was obviously mortifying for me, but then it turned into like, wow, I've never experienced a show doing this. That was like kind of crazy.
Whereas
amazing.
I was like, I will never watch this show again. This is offensive. This is stupid. And now I have no reason. And we got in a big fight because I think for you were really excited, and I actually didn't. I did not watch that show until years later when my roommates like coerced me, and I was like, no, the red wedding is still so scarred in my brain that I will not support this nonsense.
Oh, please.
Utter nonsense.
I would say the only other thing I want to say about Game of Thrones that bothers me is that I love the intro and its song so much, and you always want to skip it. And I'm like, that is so problematic for me.
Another time we'd fight, I'd be like, okay, and I'm like, okay, let's go. There's like a 10-minute thing, and you're like,
hey,
this is literally the
beautiful song. And it's like, oh, the animation slightly changes every time. Have you noticed that now
like,
Winterfell is on fire?
You're like, oh my God, Greg, look, Winterfell's on fire. Look, isn't that so interesting? I'm like, no, that's literally just...
Okay, but you also listen to podcasts on like 2.5 speed, and it's like you're taking away the essence. Like
not 2.5 speed on 1.5 speed. Also, our podcast is the only one that when I listen to it at 1.5, I'm like, we need to slow.
We talk so fast.
Like I listen to the read, and sometimes I'm like, wow, they talk so normal, and then I'm like, realize it's sped up, and then when I re-listen to it, I'm like, they talk so like if we were them right now, it'd be like Game of Thrones, like the red wedding was awful. I can't even do it, but we talk really fast.
We do. So
that I wouldn't be surprised if people who listen at sped up have to slow it down.
Like we can't.
Speeding up your podcast. I get it. There are a lot of great podcasts out there, and you want to get through them all. Currently, I have 31 downloaded episodes that I need to catch up on, and it stresses me out a little bit. And according to a 2019 survey by Edison Research, there are over 660,000 different podcasts with over 28 million episodes. Wow. And now 51% of Americans have listened to at least one podcast, and 80% of those people listen to an average of 7 shows a week. How do you get through them all? There are a bunch of different apps that can help you out with this, like Writespeed, which accelerates the pace every 2 minutes, or Overcast, which algorithmically seeks out long, thoughtful pauses in conversation and erases them. This way, you can spend your time more efficiently, learn more, and even listen to more podcasts. Or can you? Raymond Pastor from the University of North Carolina has spent a lot of time researching how audio compression impacts your learning. And he has found that the 1.5 times speed can really sacrifice retention and can overload our working memory. However, different podcasts allow different speeds. Conversational chatter can be consumed no problemo. But if you're listening to denser topics where you are lacking familiarity, skip the sonic speeds. Pastor suggests that if you want to speed things up, stick to 1.25 times, and it shouldn't hinder your retention too much. This doesn't even get into the artistry of some podcasts, where pauses, music, edits are meticulously thought out. But what do you think? Let us know using the hashtag Sidenote Podcast at what speed you listen to your pods. What speed are you listening to Sidenote Podcast right now?
But anyway, yeah, I'm just like, well, would you listen to a song sped up? I wouldn't.
No,
because to me, and a show and a podcast, to me, they're created with a tone and a timing and a cadence.
I listen to YouTube videos sped up, the ones that are about information.
I think because you turn everything into like a functional, like I'm learning, and at which case learning faster is better. But for me, like learning is a part of the experience, and also just like the experience is part of it too. So for Game of Thrones, like I don't want to just get through it. I want to live through it.
Whenever we listen to podcasts in the car, like the daily intro, I'm like, or anyone talk, I'm like, it sounds like they have horse tranquilizer. Like I'm like, every time I hear the
I'm like, I'm not
voice,
listening to this sped up. I can't understand it.
Yeah. And then sometimes I think like in my life, day-to-day life, I'm speaking so fast all the time. I'm like, is it because I'm like literally listening to things sped up? Like, is it making me go crazy? Yeah. No, honestly.
Okay, we need to get into our debate, and of which obviously Greg is a con and I am pro. So let's take a little break, and we will come back with our Game of Thrones throwdown.
If there are any controversial subjects that you want us to tackle with the formula of Sidenote Podcast, the best way to get in touch with us is to use the hashtag Sidenote Podcast, or to leave a comment on our YouTube channel, which is Sidenote Podcast. Essentially, just type Sidenote Podcast all over the place, and things will pop up, and just write to us. We have lots of ideas for upcoming episodes, but we want to hear what you think, because a lot of the time you guys give us suggestions and it gets our brains rolling and we come up with some great ideas. If we work together, we're going to get somewhere better. Is that a saying? Oh, God, I don't know. So today we are debating whether or not Game of Thrones is a good or bad show.
I mean, I feel like I'll be arguing, is it the greatest show of all time?
Okay, that oh my goodness. Okay. Of all time.
Well, or like one of, yeah.
I didn't know the stakes were that high, and I didn't know I was dating a buffoon.
Okay, well, should I start first then? I think we were just going to do like a minute of pure debate, like 1 minute for me, 1 minute for you. And then I feel like this will be more fun as like an open, because I mean, like it's a little more subjective than normal. So
you're going to go first?
I guess.
Typical,
yeah.
Okay. I'm just
You're
kidding.
You're going to time me for the minute?
Debate time.
On your mark, get set, go.
Okay, well, I mean, it's just an amazing show. I don't even have that many facts. Okay, a couple of facts I'm going to spew out is that it's like one of the most watched shows ever. They clock in like 25.1 million, I think up to 30 million when you include like all the different places of people who are watching it. It's like the most torrented show. And one interesting thing about Game of Thrones is that the audience grows like every single season, unlike something like The Walking Dead where it's like lost audience because it's like boring. Sorry, no offense. It's just like a show that is constantly growing and leading towards something and getting really exciting. Like I said before, best theme song and intro of any show. It's literally a cultural phenomenon. It's made people read. Like, what more could we ask for people to be more interested in reading? Thank you for the show to get people to go back to the book, which is exactly what I did. It's finite. It doesn't get lazy and repetitive, and it doesn't always rely on like explosions and stuff. It's like it's nuanced. It's about conversation. It has so many strong female protagonists, and ultimately, it has only gotten better over time, like a good fine wine. Bam.
Okay, wow. Put me up.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'll go right into this.
Greg, for the con, starting now.
Okay, audience growing. It's called peer pressure. It's because everyone is saying that this show is amazing, and I am going to be a whistleblower, okay? I'm going to say something that needs to be said more often. It's boring. It's literally so boring. The amount of times that I was falling asleep beside Mitch and then feeling so awful and him be like storming away, being like, I can't believe you fell asleep, but I was fighting because I'm like, I can't keep my eyes open. There's no lighting in this show. It's just darkness. I don't know who's ever like frickin' accents blending together. It's humorless. It is devoid of humor. They have like, I guess like that, what is that weird, the Ophi dude. The one who was with Arya for a while. The one who was like with her, like he's like an oaf. It's like I guess he's funny. He's just like this like good dude. He has like no character development. Oh my God, you're talking about there's strong female characters. It's the whitest show I've ever seen. There's dragons. What, you couldn't just like randomly put in people of different races? It's like if we want to get into the whole like identity politics of this show, it is a literal mess.
Okay, I see where you're coming from on the race issue.
It's truly the whitest show of all time. And what could be whiter? Lord of the Rings. And just frustrates me. I'm like, you're living in this world of fantasy. You like randomly have like dragons show up and like blow the house down and there's like a green explosion of goo or whatever. It's like you can't just like, I don't know, like for a second think, oh, maybe we could just have diverse actors and everyone could just buy into this because we don't need to create something.
I assumed you'd bring up that point. I'm not even going to try to rebut it. It is a very white show. There are not only white people on the show, I'll put it that way. Like there are different diversity there's people of color on the show of all different races, but
not any of the main characters and my 4.5 slog of seasons that I had to watch.
You're right, actually. I don't know that any of the main family protagonists, but there are some main characters that are not white, but I would agree that they're not the main characters.
Okay, there's a
None
couple...
of them are like have a seat on the throne.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's a problem.
Okay, but let's talk about the show as a show.
Okay.
Because we can agree on that point. What makes you think it's so boring?
Literally, I always was just like, I found the way that they spoke like so slow. I found that it was
you just need to watch at 1.5 speed.
Maybe I do. I found that it was like confusing. I'm like, okay, which random dude with like wearing wolf fur as this
really
that I should care
not
about?
That confusing. So
and
I
then
think
it's like,
this is a you problem.
Oh wow, I love him so much. Oh, slice his throat, he's dead. Okay, well, what am I supposed to root for?
Well, you know what I find really interesting, and I'll say two things. One of my favorite parts about this show is how it starts with a narrative that's like fairly classic of this genre of having like the good guys, the bad guys, and it slowly blends that so much over the course of the whole series where like there are people that I absolutely hated that now are my favorite characters, and there are people that I love that you see go another way and that you're acting like you hate now. And I think that's a really interesting thing. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but one proposition someone gave to me or I read online once before was like Game of Thrones is the aftermath of a classic Disney or classic Hollywood tale. So at the beginning of Game of Thrones, you have the good guys have just won the biggest war ever. Like the Baratheons and the Starks have come together. They pulled the whole realm. The North and the South are bonded, and now they've grown old and they're like old men who remember this like great war that they fought in. And that's how most movies end, is like after the war they won. But Game of Thrones is the follow-up of like how that can't stay. Nothing stays the same. And it's sort of like the story after the fairy tale ending, which then goes into the story of like the literal Game of Thrones about how like when you fought a huge war and battle to win something, it doesn't end there. Like always there's
and in this battle for Game of Thrones, everyone is white. But okay. The one time you did tell me that, I was like, okay, finally some ounce of meaning in this godforsaken mess of a show. So
why don't you first of all try reading a book before you judge it?
I will. I read books, not those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. You're
not
judging
those
a book.
books.
You're judging a book by its cover.
Not those books.
TV show.
Okay. I've also heard the books are talking to my head falls. So what is the point? Because that is like, when I think of an amazing show, I think of like Breaking Bad. It's like, okay, that's supposed to be a chemical reaction showing the
That's
full...
not what it's supposed to be.
It is. It's the full transformation of this good, wholesome, nuclear family dad into this purely evil person in this nuanced 5-season arcs. This is exactly what we are trying to say. This is so interesting. Even Pen 15, it's like, okay, we're trying to show you about vulnerability, trying to like access the fact that you can feel these like raw emotions that we can all relate to and find some comfort in the fact that other people went through this same thing that we did in our like worst stage.
Here's what I'll
What
say.
is the point of this dragon nonsense?
So, okay, I actually think this is interesting and why Game of Thrones is really unique. So there are definitely themes and there are definitely poignant moments that bring about points within episodes or within seasons.
Like,
well, I just mean like you can obviously find like the kinship of like struggling with people and like the idea of having to be honorable versus like doing the thing that you believe is right and breaking away from your family and I don't know, all these different levels.
Are we kings? None of us are kings.
No, but
like
people
the queen
still
can relate.
People still have these problems. I think the themes are universal. But what I think is most interesting is that the show doesn't follow the convention of having to have a specific moment. And I think the books do that well.
What?
It's like okay, I love the show Pen 15. I love all those other shows you're mentioning and that they kind of like tell a story and like here's the beautiful perfect picture. But just like I said, this is after the fairy tale and there is no beautiful perfect picture ever. And life sometimes is brutish and life sometimes has a story that you think is telling you one narrative and then that narrative just ends. And so I think there's kind of like a metaphor here for it being a little more realistic in that there are, you know, you can pull out metaphors, you can pull out meaning throughout, but there's no one through line other than a narrative that's you're interested in the characters and compelled by.
It sounds like you're
what
really good at justifying like a writer's room who's like, we'll just see what sticks.
Okay,
like,
great.
Oh, here's some incest. Here's some rape. Here's some like.
What does it mean when something's like the most popular show of all time? Like,
I think
you can't tell me it's just bad.
I think it means that when you literally aren't afraid to create extreme violence, like incest, rape, all these like almost like grotesque, insane. It's like what we were talking about last week with conspiracy theories. It's like, yeah, if you really want to tap into that like market, like people are gonna be shocked.
Okay, but you are absolutely selling it short. When you say that, there is violence, there is controversial.
Well, we should talk about that specific. There was a horrible rape scene in Game of Thrones, which I read a lot about. That's a really problematic thing.
I think there are definitely problems with the way they've chosen to do some things in the show, some things that did not happen in the books that they've put in the show.
So I don't think it should go down as the best show of all time because there's other shows that don't have.
I guess to me as like as a piece of entertainment, because I've read like 3 of the books. I haven't read all of them. I really enjoyed them too, and so it adds up to the lore of me enjoying it as like a franchise. But yeah, like
that was really messed up. I didn't watch that season, but the way I read about it was awful.
The amount of like female nudity that they show, but not male nudity. Like not that I'm like
oh my god,
but it's like unnecessary.
In the comeback, the newer season when she's like imitating Game of Thrones and she's like standing beside the 2 women, like it's true. In the earlier seasons, you're like, why is all these like these women
like,
just always have their shirts on?
Yeah,
and I guess sometimes we see some dick and we see some butt, but it's not even.
It's kind of like an HBO thing. Like they do that in
Westworld. It's an issue across HBO.
I don't know, like because I mean, you said Breaking Bad. I love that show. It's amazing, but it also has extreme violence. The first season like catches you, it grips you because it's like actually so tense and intense. Like it's not just a beautiful story about a
but
man's
the violence
struggle.
is like really integral to the like plot and to showing like the stakes and where he's gonna go as a person.
Why is that different here? I agree the nudity is unnecessary.
Because the nudity, there's
a
specific rape scene against Sansa Stark, which was not necessary. It wasn't even in the book. They used it as advertising to kind of be like something really big happens in the middle of the season, and it was like it cuts to the man instead of her. Like they're trying to show her pain, but it apparently cuts to the man like reaction pain. It's directed by so many men. That to me sounded like a really disgusting use of that like trope to create stakes, which weren't necessary. And I'm taking this from you arguing other people exactly my point. You've talked about how you thought that scene was really problematic.
Of course, I'm not disagreeing with that.
So that's just like something where I'm like,
but
if you're willing to
something
do
as
that,
a whole, like I can see. I think it's okay to look at something and point out its flaws and still enjoy, so long as the flaws aren't like so
that sounds like a pretty big flaw.
No, I agree. It was a misstep. But I just mean like in the whole of the show, I think like they probably learned from that, and I think the rest of the show. And not that there aren't.
The last season better have a bunch of dicks. That's all I gotta say. Make up for lost time. Dicks. Flapping.
A dick gets cut off in one of the seasons you haven't watched. So.
That's satisfying. No, I have watched that.
Oh, you did watch
that? Yeah, I saw a dick get cut off of that like guy who's like Lily Allen's brother.
I mean, I wouldn't know.
I think so. Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think I think
you love it. You watch YouTube videos of it, like when the trailer came out.
Because the new season's coming out. I love to watch fan theories because at this point, once the show caught up with the books, I was like, okay, no one actually knows, so it's fun. I don't want to get spoilers.
The like final battle scene, they filmed 3, right, so that no one could know which one they used.
Yeah.
And apparently, the actors would get their scripts on an iPad, and then it would be like deleted off their iPad, like literally burned from existence at the end of the day, so that they couldn't ever be contributing to spoilers, or you couldn't have a physical copy.
Right.
And they said it was so hard to act.
Yeah.
Like there's
like
something about that
it immediately.
Yeah, it excites me. Like I do miss. I'm so mad I watched Breaking Bad after. Like I remember, like we had a roommate.
Heard the cultural stuff. Like every time, like an episode in the final season would air, everyone
was going to bars to watch it.
Would be like, "Oh my god, did you watch Breaking Bad?" We'd be like, "We don't watch that show."
So I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm not going to be able to be a part of this like giant.
You could
cultural
still.
phenomenon.
I think that's what's fun for me too. Like there are only, to me, and maybe there are more, but there are only a handful of shows that people still do that for. Where I feel like
RuPaul's Drag Race.
Well, yeah, but even that is not like it happened. Definitely, people have like online momentum for RuPaul's, but it's not the same.
But we go to bars to watch that,
and it's not the same as a narrative show. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
I feel like an amazing narrative show can do something to people where. To a degree, it's in the control of the writers. Like, whereas a reality show,
it's not always going to be
one way
good,
or the other. You don't depend on it in the same way. Whereas a scripted show, you're like, what
Someone's
are they going to do?
This,
and I hope this ends up perfectly the way I want it to. And so, being part of that, like through the past couple seasons, I just found like so satisfying to like see everyone's reactions, be part of it, and knowing where we're at now, and just being like, this freaking show that is so popular is just going to end, and that's going to be such a weird experience.
Well, it ended for me.
But are there other shows like that for you that you've watched
right.
that are narrative that you're like kind of scared and sad for them to end because they'll leave? Like for me,
Broad City, I'm sad as ending.
that's true, and that's
not
right
nearly
now
as
too. But narrative. It's not as narrative driven.
No one's died in that yet.
And like, for me, like obviously that'll happen for Survivor, which is not narrative driven, but I've been watching it for like literally 20 years. So like,
I don't think Survivor's ever gonna end. Jeff Probst is gonna get Botox until he's 89.
Like such a Botox monster.
His face is not moving too much these days. No shade.
Yeah, so I think I know you don't have a lot of time. This is gonna come out, you think I should? In a couple weeks from when we record it. You've been saying maybe you would. I would absolutely at least go back to like season 5, 6, 7 and watch them if we could. I just don't know if you're prepared to watch that much TV, even though I would.
Well, I'm not prepared to snooze alert. I'm gonna fall asleep.
If that's actually how you feel, then you shouldn't watch it. But you are. I know you're gonna be so annoyed and I'm gonna probably go and watch it.
And is Arya still alive?
I'm not telling you. It's one of those things where like you will miss out and you will never be able to get that back. Like the most famous show of the last like 10 years is about to end and everyone's going to experience it together and that will never happen again.
Every night at that time I'm going to close my eyes, take a bath, draw a bath, sit there with some Epsom salts and you know what? I'm just going to relax. That's what I'm gonna do.
Like me and all my friends are in the basement like
No, I'm honestly like I am. I'm feeling FOMO. I have FOMO to the max. We've all been there scrolling through our social media feeds wondering why we weren't accumulating experiences as awesome as the ones that everyone else seemed to be having.
I'm sorry that people are so jealous of me, but I can't help it that I'm popular.
FOMO, I live with this all the time, also known as the fear of missing out, is a particular social anxiety that can be defined as a fear of regret.
It's a feeling that you get when you think everybody's having fun without you, otherwise known as high school for me.
It causes one to want to be continually connected to others and what they're doing, and to wonder whether or not you've made the right decision on how to spend your own time. FOMO can be explained through the idea of loss aversion, which states that in our heads, losses have twice as much impact psychologically as gains. That kinda sucks. That means even if you're having a great experience, the prospect of losing out on other awesome experiences is going to have a greater effect on you. And these negative effects are only exacerbated by social media. FOMO is experienced most by active social media users, especially those accustomed to assessing social media during meals, right before bed, and first thing in the morning. As our collective addiction to social media deepens, the prevalence of FOMO increases. All this extra connectivity invokes what is referred to as the paradox of choice. The more choices we have, the less happy we'll be with the decisions that we make. Essentially, more choices lead to more things we feel we're missing out on. This is an issue as FOMO has been linked to degraded mood levels, lower satisfaction of one's life, as well as stress, sleep problems. It can also literally contribute to symptoms of anxiety and depression. So if, like me, sometimes you find that you are someone who suffers from FOMO, or you actually feel like you're suffering from FOMO regularly, consider taking a break from social media.
I'm taking a break from using Facebook.
Or just leaving your phone at home and getting out there and just having your own adventure. When it comes to having to make decisions for your time or what to do, try narrowing down your options first and learn to accept good enough. Practice gratitude towards any of the good that the decision that you have made brings to you, rather than focusing on the regret, the disappointment, and the things you're missing out on. This is all so much easier said than done, I know, but we can see the direct connection between social media and FOMO. So if you are experiencing FOMO, you might need to look at your social media use and figure out ways to curb it. Okay, so let's end this by you telling, right now, it'll be locked in history. What do you think is going to happen in the end of this show?
Okay, I don't have like a hard prediction, but I what I'm worried about is that it's going to be a happy ending, and that, like John.
That's going to go against what you think the meaning is.
Yeah, because if it wraps up in that way, what I could see maybe happening, someone convinced me that it could wrap up in a happy way.
Because isn't that kind of like the
compelling.
beginning where it's like the...
Right, it's kind of like, the message could be like, the Game of Thrones never ends. Like, they could maybe win in the second last episode, and then the last episode
or the
could
last
just
scene is just
off.
like one of them getting beheaded, and then it ends. It's like...
True,
yeah.
or like the beginning of another thing that like we didn't see coming, and now it's just like, the Game of Thrones never ends. That could be a message.
Okay.
But I also would kind of be so into... Well, no, it's just like...
I'm kidding. We don't need
I'd
to go
also
back.
be into this idea that just like the White Walkers win, and it's just like, I don't know what the message of that is other than like, sometimes things don't go as planned, and... I'm excited this season we're going to learn about the White Walkers. I think they've represented...
Even the White Walkers are white.
True. Some of them are trolls. Okay. Easy. But I think we've always seen them as pure evil. And now the show has a chance, and I imagine the books too, to be like, they're also nuanced. This thing, like, in the beginning, you see certain people as pure evil.
Like, they're going to be like, my kid just got
they
killed.
must have a motivation. Otherwise, it's bad story writing if, like, these things, all they want to do is just kill.
So I'm thinking it's going to be the bad storytelling one. They're just going to kill. They're just going to look at the camera viciously with their, like, what color are their eyes? Blue?
Why is that bad storytelling?
Isn't that what you just said?
Like,
if
if
they
we
just, like,
never
win,
find
and
out.
we never find out. They're just pure evil.
We're going to find out about... Because we know a little bit about the White Walkers.
Oh, my God,
and
maybe
how they were created.
No, I can't do a spoiler of us. I'm like, maybe they're the tethered, but that doesn't make sense. Imagine.
Okay, no.
Imagine they like the Game of Thrones people like us comes out and they're like, oh my God, damn, we gotta rewrite it. Oh, God.
No, I think I'm excited. Last season was a little iffy. It was not my favorite because they kind of...
Didn't you say they all of a sudden started to show up in random places?
Yeah,
where
the tone and
made no
pacing of the
sense?
show
That's sketchy.
showed that they needed to get through so much. But anyway, that's my prediction is a messy ending that is sort of poignant, but we're left being like, not with just like a perfect happy ending.
Okay, so what I think is going to happen is Arya is going to like find some sort of like...
Arya's dead.
What? Oh my God. I was about to like flip this table and just be
You've
like,
seen
wow.
the trailer.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Arya's not dead. Arya's going to find some weird potion. She's going to drink it. She's going to be able to go back in time to the Red Wedding, and she's going to be able to like fix all that, bring back her family, bring back everyone, and it's going to start...
Oh, you missed
it's gonna
a
end where
really
it started.
satisfying Arya Red Wedding redemption arc.
Really? Okay, I'll watch that. It's on YouTube. I'll watch that.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Let us know your guys' predictions.
Oh my gosh,
like,
please. Hashtag
I'm
Sidenote
sure there are
podcast.
people,
Be on my side, please.
I honestly think there are a lot of like closet
Be a
Game of Thrones
whistleblower.
haters.
It's okay amongst your friends. Speak out loud. Okay?
You know what though?
Talk
Amongst
in groups.
my friends, sometimes I feel like I'm the oppressed, and I'm the one who has to like defend my love of Game of Thrones. Okay?
What? Who? Everyone likes
Everyone
Game
in
of
this office.
Okay, that's actually
No,
true.
not a single person in this
We
office.
hire smart people. What can I say?
But I want to know, do you hate it? Do you love it? And I want to know other people's predictions without, like, I guess there can't be proper spoilers for it. But I've watched some theories, and there's a lot of different ones. I want to know what you think. Hashtag Sidenote Podcast.
I'm excited for all of your cultural... and
convince. I want you to convince Greg with me that he should just catch up, even if he doesn't like it. I think it'll be a fun weekly moment for everyone, including him. And we just for this time period have HBO Go so we can watch it. So like, I'm excited to finally not have to stream it. Okay, thank you guys
so much
for listening. And winter is coming.